Hi, my name is Jacqueline Taucar, and I'll be talking about the beautiful and sweaty concepts of Caribbean Carnival costumes. Toronto's annual Caribbean Carnival is one of the largest diasporic festivals of its kind in North America, celebrating Caribbean culture, cuisine, and performance for 3 weeks in July and August. The festival draws over 1 million spectators to Lakeshore Boulevard to watch over 20,000 masqueraders, over 80% of whom are women, as they whine and dance for almost 3 kilometers in their elaborate costumes called mas, which is short for masquerade. Through spectacular acts of costuming, a space of visibility, expression, and presence is created for the Caribbean diaspora at Toronto's annual festival. This flash talk explores Caribbean Carnival costumes as a way of thinking, feeling, and being in a world that is challenging, especially for the raced, classed, and gendered bodies of Caribbean descent in Toronto. In particular, I'm interested in exploring the sweaty concepts of pretty mas, using Michelle Ray's 2018 award-winning The Rise of the Cherry Blossom costume, hereafter Cherry Blossom, as a case study. I will discuss the complexity of a costume that artfully and beautifully renders the difficulty of a raced and gendered body being in the world, not as a means of obscuring that labor, but rather exposing and exploring how beauty and sweat co-mingle in the lived experience of Toronto's Caribbean diaspora. Here it may appear that the concepts of sweatiness and beauty are at odds with one another, where one invokes repulsion through the smell and feelings of perspiration, the other attracts by outward appearances. But when examined through the lens of Sarah Achman's notion of sweaty concepts, inherent in describing, quote, a body that is not at home in the world, end quote, I seek to discuss the difficulty of the lived experience a beautiful Caribbean Carnival costume makes affectively, visually, and materially manifest. The sweatiness of pretty mas is its challenge to Carnival's existing forms and modes of female representation, as well as its power structures. With an all-female design-build team, of which I was a part, the Cherry Blossom challenges existing power structures within workshops that traditionally see men in positions of power, overseeing design and construction. Achman argues that, quote, a sweaty concept might come out of a bodily experience that is trying, end quote. The labor, struggle, and sweat to build the cherry blossom not only involved working with the materials, but was also generated by coming up against the difficulty of being a woman in the patriarchal world of the workshop and trying to transform the assumption of what women can do in this space. In this regard, Ray's sweated to prove her concept and design, as well as her ability and skill to lead a team. The result of Ray's labor was that the Cherry Blossom received the 2018 Ontario Science Centre's Innovation in Mass Award for its design, imaginative use of materials, and challenging the status quo of male-led design-build teams. I see pretty mas, like the cherry blossom, as a sweaty concept in Caribbean Carnival costuming because it marks a reorientation of costuming practices that explores the bodies, experiences, and feelings of women. Historically, carnival costumes have been developed by men for men to play, reflecting Trinidad's patriarchal society. In the early years of Caribbean Carnival up to the 1960s, respectable women did not play mas. An increase of women's participation beginning in the 1980s correlated with greater access to jobs and economic independence. Samantha Noel contends that, quote, the costume aesthetic of this period now accentuated the woman's body. Her insistent use of the unguarded public sphere of the streets for rebelliously contesting tenets of proper behavior laid the foundations for a new creative direction in costuming and masquerading. Displacing masculine characters, Pretty Mas reflects a feminine pleasure and aesthetics, drawing attention to the partially naked female body with ornately embellished bikini tops or wire cage bras, with colorful rhinestones and beads that drip down torsos, large feathered backpacks and headgear both frame and act as extensions of the body, and bikini bottoms or G-strings are decorated with beaded belts that playfully bounce and sensuously caress hips and thighs. The cherry blossom embraces the pretty and feminine aesthetics through its soft pink and lavender colors and the use of paillettes and large sequins to reflect light, which make the costume appear to illuminate and glitter from within. This mask stands at just under 30 feet tall and 30 feet wide, expanding Ray's body beyond her natural limits. The size and scope of the mask creates space of visibility for Rays on the road in performance, a visibility and space that is not usually afforded to persons of color outside of carnival time. Dancing the mask is also sweaty work, as it weighs close to 3 times her weight. It is a feat of endurance, strength, and resilience that makes materially and effectively manifest the difficult experience of being Caribbean in Canada and facing the systemic racism that still bars people of color from full and equal participation in society. We must recognize that there is a degree of ambivalence in this new mode of carnival. In so doing, we can examine masks in a way that develops a more nuanced understanding of agency and consider Sapa Mahmood's call to examine forms that do not fit, quote, the binary model of subordination and subversion, end quote. Caribbean Carnival is criticized for its bikinis, beads, and feathers, for being a commercially pretty product for consumption. Such criticisms of contemporary pretty masks require closer examination for setting in opposition a style of costume that focuses on women's experience, aesthetics, pleasure, and presence against the nostalgia of old mask traditions, which were, by and large, designed by men for men in response to the conditions in which they found themselves post-emancipation and then during 2 world wars. There is an underlying patriarchal and misogynistic assumption in criticizing pretty masks and, by extension, the women's bodies who wear it for its lack of politics and in privileging the authenticity of traditional masks developed by men over a century ago. However, I want to consider the sweatiness of prettiness. Candace Panton argues that during Carnival, women liberate their bodies and have, quote, well-earned fun, where they are able to express themselves as powerful, desirable, and beautiful, not just successful, demure women, end quote. As such, embracing a Caribbean aesthetic of pretty becomes a sweaty concept in challenging conservative, white, Eurocentric ideals of feminine propriety, and developing an alternative, a community understanding of beauty that reveals new ways of being and feeling as a woman in the Caribbean diaspora. In addition, women's enjoyment of their own bodies during the festival also ruptures the link of femininity with heteronormativity, in enacting a carnival aesthetic of femininity for her pleasure and not his. Examining pretty masks like the cherry blossom can open up an inquiry, quote, on how appearance normativity is challenged, subverted, reconditioned, and altered through the event and practice of costuming, end quote. Pretty masks, as such as the cherry blossom, engages practically with the attempt to shift the patriarchal and colonial politics of the world, generating perspirative ideas in the struggle to define and perform new understandings of being and feeling Caribbean in Toronto. Thank you so much for your time.